When I heard the amount from my brother's mouth, I couldn't help but laugh. What was that again? How much is the wedding going to cost? $55,000. No more, no less. Lily calculated everything for us. That includes the flowers, catering, and the venue deposit. Sitting in front of me with his arms arrogantly crossed was my younger brother, Brandon, 10 years younger than me. A lost soul at just 22. Next to him sat his fiancée, Lily, with a composed expression. She looked to be about my age, maybe a bit older. Lily tilted her wine glass slightly and said, "Well, we're family, right? Of course, we're supposed to support each other." I see. So, you want me to pay? $55,000? Yeah. Erica, you already inherited Mom's house, didn't you? So we figured it's only fair we get a share too. I mean, the wedding costs could easily come out of that, right? Or wait, are you seriously thinking that house is all yours? Even though nobody's living there right now? Brandon said this with a smug grin, and I stared straight at him. True, the house I inherited from Mom was unoccupied. I was planning to move into it when my apartment lease was up. In that case, I'll pay up to $10,000. The rest is on you too. What? That's it? That's nothing. Maybe you'll understand the weight of nothing once you start actually working for it. I didn't say it out loud, but my heart had already gone cold. Brandon is the baby of the family. Especially adored by our mother, he was raised like a little prince. But the truth is, I was the one who took care of him the most. How to mix his formula, how to change his diapers, how to read him picture books. Maybe I wasn't just a big sister, I was more like a little mom to him. And that's exactly why. When Brandon, still not fully grown up, reached for Mom's inheritance saying, "We're family," so of course, some part of me wanted to cry. The Brandon I once knew was gone. My name is Erica Bloom. I'm 32 years old. I live with my lawyer husband and our young daughter in a suburban town on the west coast of the U.S. I didn't go to law school myself, but I work in my husband's law office as a secretary. My mother passed away 6 months ago. When it comes to inheritance, everything depends on wills and trusts. After I became the trustee, Brandon and Lily, in a way, started showing their true colors. That day, I was at home with my husband and daughter. My daughter was struggling with some homework from her tutoring class, and I was sitting beside her, looking over her notebook, offering suggestions like, "Why don't you try it this way?" My husband was in the kitchen preparing dinner. He's in charge of cooking on weekends, and our daughter always looks forward to it. It was just an ordinary, peaceful weekend until it happened. Brandon contacted me out of the blue for the first time in a while. "So why exactly do I have to pay $55,000 for your wedding?" Brandon called me out of nowhere and demanded that kind of money. "Come on, it's the most important event of my life. If you could help us out, it'd make our new beginning perfect." Still, that amount is just ridiculous. Wedding expenses are something a couple should handle together. It's not that I don't want to help, but the most I can offer is $10,000. Brandon exploded at my answer. "What? Just 10 grand? And you still call this family? You're managing Mom's inheritance. But that's basically the same as holding on to my share without asking. The estate was divided fairly. You agreed and signed the documents yourself. How do we even know that's what Mom really wanted? She was sick, right?" Maybe her judgment wasn't totally clear. At that moment, I was starting to realize it. This wasn't just Brandon's idea. Someone next to him was fueling the fire, and it had probably started quietly even before our mother passed away. As I was thinking that, Brandon suddenly changed the subject. "Well, whatever. Oh, by the way, your birthday's next week, right?" Lily and I talked and made a reservation at a nice restaurant. "How about we go out for dinner together for the first time in a while? I'm surprised you even remembered my birthday." Of course I did. "We're family, aren't we?" His tone was light and cheerful, but I could sense the intention behind it. "Can my husband come too?" "What? Oh, yeah, sure. Of course." On the day of the dinner, my husband and I headed to the designated restaurant. We were led to a semi-private space divided by a partition. Inside, Brandon and his fiancée Lily were already seated. "Hey, happy birthday!" Brandon raised his glass for a toast. "Thanks, but this place is kind of oddly designed. I thought it was supposed to be a private room. But someone's sitting over there, aren't they?" I glanced beyond the divider. At the table were three unfamiliar people in suits. Even though it was a restaurant, they weren't eating. Instead, documents and files were spread out on the table. Don't worry about it. It's quiet here, so I guess some people use it for business meetings. Brandon smiled and held out his wine glass. Lily added with a bright smile. Today is a celebration. Let's try to enjoy ourselves, shall we? Although we sat down for now, the atmosphere felt awkward. Despite the small talk, Brandon and Lily were clearly restless. They kept exchanging glances, looking like they were anxiously waiting for something. At that moment, Brandon brought it up. So, Erica, I think we really should talk about the inheritance again. So that was the real reason behind all of this. I get that you inherited the house, Erica, but honestly, I can't accept that. Brandon's voice was sharp. His eyes were filled with frustration and resentment. You got the house, and I was supposed to get a lump sum of cash, right? Yes, that's true. But Mom clearly stated in her will that everything, including Dad's life insurance and their savings, should be split as equally as possible. I explained calmly. Then Lily, grinning beside him, opened her mouth. But I understand Brandon's point too. That house is really nice. It should be worth a fortune. Shouldn't you reconsider how it's divided? No one's even living there now, right? That just makes it more of a waste. Brandon's face brightened for a moment at Lily's words, but it was the kind of confidence that felt like they were trying to manipulate us. Exactly, Lily gets it. That's what I've been saying. Let's just sell the house and split the money 50-50. That way, I'll actually have some freedom. I mean, that little bit of cash is completely unfair. I was stunned. The inheritance Mom had carefully planned out while thinking about our futures. They were trying to tear it all apart so casually. It's not that simple. It's our duty to respect Mom's wishes. My husband silently nodded in agreement. Still, Brandon didn't back down. His frustration wasn't just Lily's influence. It felt like his lifelong spoiled behavior was finally bursting out. As I considered how to respond, Brandon gave a quick glance toward the other side of the partition. The three people in suits stood up and began walking toward our table. These are my lawyers. I invited them today so we could keep the discussion smooth. Lily swiftly pulled out an envelope and placed it in front of me. Erica, would you mind signing this, please? It's a delegation agreement to transfer your family assets into a new trust. Of course, your brother has legal rights as well, and this would reduce the burden on you. I frowned. Wait a second. Are you asking me to give up control of the assets? No, it's simply a delegation of management authority. Lily continued with a smile. Brandon will be the trustee of the new trust, and I'll be his co-trustee to assist him. This was clearly absurd. There was no way I was signing anything like that. Just then, my husband, who had been silently scanning the documents the whole time, finally spoke. I see. So this is coercion of asset transfer disguised as a birthday celebration. Lily and Brandon froze. What are you saying? And who are you to even say that? I'm Erica's husband, and I'm also a lawyer. What? I briefly looked over this agreement. It's a document that pretends to be a delegation contract, but it's actually a clear transfer of ownership. The fact that Lily, the fiancée, is listed as co-trustee makes this a glaring conflict of interest. His tone was calm, but unrelenting. If Erica were to sign this, it could potentially constitute criminal coercion or even fraud. And just so you know, everything in this conversation has been recorded from earlier. At that, my husband calmly pulled a small voice recorder from the inner pocket of his suit and placed it on the table. Deep, a red light blinked, signaling that recording had started. Lily's face twisted when she saw it. Brandon muttered, "Huh?" and then fell silent. One of the suited lawyers began to move nervously as if preparing to leave. This is not the situation we anticipated. Please excuse me for today. I should be going as well. The three lawyers stood up and left one by one, as if fleeing the scene. Wait, hold on. Brandon raised his voice in a panic. That the tide had already turned. They had underestimated me, assuming I was an easy-to-manipulate older sister. They knew nothing of who I truly was. Now then, are you ready to continue this discussion in a formal setting? As I gently set my wine glass back on the table, I could see the blood draining from Brandon's face. His expression no longer reflected that of a celebration. There may be things too difficult to discuss here. Fortunately, my law office is just a short walk from this restaurant. Would you be willing to join us there? As my husband stood up and spoke quietly, Lily turned pale, and Brandon looked around nervously, as if searching for an escape route. Several minutes later, we were inside an office just 3 minutes walk from the restaurant. The reception room was simple and calm. File cabinets lined the wall, and a few documents were already arranged on the table. Brandon and Lily sat side by side on the sofa, while my husband and I took our seats on the opposite side. A few documents lay on the table, and on top of them, the voice recorder continued to blink its red light steadily. So, what exactly are we doing here? Lily spoke with a smile, trying to hide her unease, but my husband didn't respond. Instead, he placed a thick file in front of him and slowly opened it. Would you take a look at this, please? He pulled out a portion of the report and handed it toward Brandon. This is a private investigator's report, commissioned during her lifetime by the late Violet Moore, your mother. Private investigator? Brandon furrowed his brow, and Lily's eyes widened. The subject of the investigation is you, Lily. This report contains a detailed record of your behavior toward Erica's mother. My husband began reading aloud. Lily visited multiple neighbors of the target, asking questions such as, has Mrs. Moore been acting a little strange lately? In a way that caused concern. The subject attempted to gather information about the target's financial situation using a false identity. History confirms previous contact with other elderly women of means in similar fashion. Lily's lips trembled. Wait a second, you can't talk your way out of this. For the first time, I cut in with a cold voice. My mother felt something was off about you from the beginning. You showed up claiming to be her son's girlfriend, yet you knew too much about her health and finances. She confided in me at first, but with no concrete proof. She hired a private investigator herself. I took an envelope out of my bag. It was another set of documents my mother had entrusted to me. And what I pulled out was a draft application for a guardianship arrangement written by Lily. The date was from a time when my mother was still alive. You were preparing to file for a voluntary guardianship by asserting that my mother was mentally unstable. In other words, you were trying to invalidate her will and financial authority and make yourself her legal proxy, giving you direct control over her assets. Lily was speechless. Her hands were clenched tightly on her knees. This is unbelievable, Brandon whispered quietly. Lily, you really went that far? I was thinking of you. No, that's not true. You weren't thinking of me. You were blinded by my mother's money. At those words, Lily's eyes wavered. Brandon, I spoke slowly. If you truly believed she was someone you could trust, then you share the responsibility. Brandon bit his lip and had nothing to say. But listen, I gently placed the documents on the table and looked at my husband. Your mother didn't completely give up on you. She made sure things were divided equally. If you hadn't asked for more, you could have held onto your rightful place as her son. My husband continued. However, the actions you both took were the equivalent of throwing that right away with your own hands. The red light on the recorder continued blinking quietly. That small, steady pulse looked like the final warning to Lily and Brandon. Lily, completely drained to respond, lowered her head and fell silent. Amid the silence, my husband slowly pointed to the voice recorder sitting on the table. By the way, this entire conversation is being recorded as well. The red light on the voice recorder glowed steadily, indicating that it was in use. Lily looked up for a moment. Her eyes clearly showed fear. A soundless breath escaped her lips as her throat moved. My husband continued in a calm voice. If there is any suspicion of coercion or fraudulent agreements, this recording may be submitted as valid evidence. Of course, through proper legal channels. Lily lowered her gaze, her shoulders trembling. But then, in the next moment, rather than refute our words, Lily scowled and folded her arms. What? Are you serious? I have a signed contract with Brandon. Your legal logic doesn't apply here. She raised her voice, as if asserting the absolute legality of what she held. But my husband quietly picked up a document and replied coolly. That so-called contract is merely a memorandum. It does not carry legal force. It's not a formal engagement agreement or a legally binding inheritance division contract, so the likelihood of it being invalidated is extremely high. Lily faltered for a moment, but quickly snapped back. Don't be ridiculous. This is my trump card. If you think I'm going to lose to you, you're dead wrong. I'm not giving up. With that, she turned on her heel and stormed toward the door. Bang! The door slammed violently behind her. What a storm of a woman! My husband let out a small sigh and began to tidy up the documents on the table. After Lily's outburst and departure, Brandon remained slouched in his chair, looking utterly drained. Given how thoroughly she was exposed, that reaction was expected. But we still can't let our guard down. I nodded firmly. This wasn't over yet. Brandon, I'm sorry, but from here, we need to have a family discussion. Would you mind staying a little longer? As my husband spoke, he switched off the voice recorder. The red light indicating it was recording turned off. I'll talk to Lily properly. But why was I so blindly following someone like her? Brandon muttered, his voice hoarse and distant. The arrogance he'd shown up to that point had vanished. With his shoulders slumped, he looked like a lost child. Even realizing that is a step forward, I said quietly, "But what you did to Mom, and to me, that doesn't disappear." Brandon kept his head down, biting his lip. "Do you think Mom always believed in me?" I said nothing for a moment. Then I let out a small sigh and pulled an envelope from my bag. "This is a letter Mom wrote for you before she passed. I wasn't sure if I should give it to you, but I think you're ready now." I placed the envelope on the table. She truly believed that you could change, right up to the end. That's why she divided the inheritance equally. But giving the same amount of money and giving the same level of trust, they're not the same thing. Brandon stared at the envelope without saying a word. He reached for it, pulled back, and reached again. That hesitation reflected his inner turmoil. I've been such an idiot. At those words, I narrowed my eyes just a little. You were an idiot, but it's not too late. My husband then spoke in my place. What matters now is what you choose to do going forward. Brandon gave a deep nod. I'll settle things with Lily too. I don't want to add to my debts anymore. I couldn't face Mom or you, Erica. I don't care what you think of my face. Just stop trampling on what Mom believed in. I stood up and gently placed my hand next to the envelope. Stop using, because you're my sister, as an excuse to depend on me. That ends here. Brandon gave a small but definite nod. Well then, it wouldn't be any fun if we just let this slide. How about we take a little counteraction? My husband turned to me with a question, looking almost cheerful. Of course. I'm not planning on losing either. What about you, Brandon? There was a short pause before Brandon looked up, his face stiff. What? He slowly let out a breath and spoke as if he had made up his mind. Okay, I'll do it too. I'm not letting her get away with everything. We all nodded to each other. This battle wasn't over. In fact, it was just getting started. A few days later, in a glamorous hotel banquet hall, friends and family gathered to celebrate Brandon and Lily. Lily wore a beautiful dress, greeting the guests with a confident smile. She looked radiant, as if nothing had happened at the law office the other day. My husband and I arrived at the venue together. We had purposely chosen not to cancel this wedding reception. It was the perfect place to expose what she had done. If we simply let it end here, Lily would just move on and deceive someone else. So we decided to confront her with the truth right there and then. With quiet resolve in my chest, I sat down. The MC stood on the stage and announced, "Now, let's hear a few words from the bride and groom." Lily stood up with a smile, took Brandon's hand, and started walking toward the mic. It was at that very moment. Before that, may I say just a few words? I rose quietly and took the mic. A murmur spread through the room. Everyone, thank you for coming today. I'm sorry to bring this up at such a joyful occasion, but please allow me a moment to speak. Next to me, my husband quietly pulled a voice recorder from his bag and placed it on the table. The glowing green play button looked ready to summon the voices of the past. It was the audio we recorded during that birthday dinner. Everything had led to this moment. A few days ago, I was invited by Brandon and Lily to a restaurant under the pretense of a birthday celebration. But there, I was pressured, accompanied by 3 lawyers, to sign over the rights to the house and assets I inherited from my mother. The quiet murmur in the room grew louder. Guests began glancing at one another. Just in case, my husband and I recorded the conversation. I'd like to share a small portion of it with all of you. My husband pressed a button, and Lily's voice echoed throughout the hall. Erica, if you just sign right now, everything will be taken care of. Leave the estate management to us. This is a family agreement, right? Brandon understands too, doesn't he? Don't worry, she's a pushover. She won't resist. The moment everyone recognized it was Lily's voice, the atmosphere in the room froze. Furthermore, my mother had hired a private investigator before she passed. The investigator gathered evidence that Lily had been asking neighbors about my mother's mental health and financial situation. I handed one of the documents my husband was holding toward Lily. Her face turned pale in an instant. This is her true motive. This marriage was not built on love or trust. It was a calculated plan to seize assets. Wait, that's a misunderstanding, Lily shouted. Brandon, please, believe me. I really. But before she could finish, Brandon stepped forward. It's enough. After hearing everything, I finally woke up. I was a fool to do what you told me and try to deceive my sister. I can't betray Erica anymore. Brandon, what are you saying? I'm calling off the wedding. It ends here. Lily's face twisted into a deranged smile. Don't be ridiculous. This is all just an act. You're all in on this together, trying to ruin me, aren't you? Who would believe this farce? Everyone's watching this farce right now, along with the recordings and evidence. My husband's calm voice echoed heavily across the hall. And then Lily, receiving no support from anyone, stumbled backward, knocking over her chair, and fled the room. No one followed her. In the silence that returned to the hall, I took a deep breath. We had prepared ourselves for this moment. Finally, everything was over. Brandon, left behind in the wedding hall, took the mic with a solemn expression. Lily was gone, but he did not run away. Everyone, I'm truly sorry. He said it sincerely, no longer carrying any of his previous irresponsibility or superficial charm. I did terrible things to Erica, just following Lily's lead. Trying to use my family for money was disgraceful and shameful. The room remained quiet, but no one laughed at him. But from now on, I'll live properly. I'll get a steady job, and I won't let anyone control me again. Erica, again, I'm really sorry. At those words, I gave a slight nod and narrowed my eyes gently. The atmosphere in the hall softened. Sensing the change, the MC shifted the tone. Now then, though the bride is unfortunately absent, we'd like to invite a few words from the groom and his family. I took the microphone once more, smiling gently. Thank you all for coming today. This was supposed to be a joyous wedding ceremony, but instead, I believe today will be remembered as a different kind of turning point. Family can be difficult, but they are also irreplaceable. Today, my brother and I decided to face each other again as a true family. And I will do my best to support the brother who is trying to grow. Applause followed. It was quiet and warm. A long day was finally coming to an end. Several weeks have passed since the supposed wedding. Now, I'm sitting in the living room of the house I inherited from my mother, basking in the soft afternoon sunlight beside my husband. There's hot tea in our cups, and the early summer greenery stretches beyond the window. That day already feels like a distant memory. Brandon really did change after that. He got a job at a local company, and the other day he happily told me, my probation period just ended. Of course, things with Lily were officially over, but maybe that breakup was actually the real beginning for him. Thanks, Erica. I finally feel like I'm really living my life. When Brandon said that on the phone, I felt truly relieved from the bottom of my heart. The inheritance has all been properly distributed now, and everything proceeded fairly and faithfully, just as our mother wished. Part of the trust was donated to a domestic violence support group Mom was involved with, and a small fund was created in her name. I now volunteer with that organization. Once a week, I help answer support calls and coordinate aid. At first, thinking of Mom made it hard to breathe, but now hearing someone say thank you makes me feel like I'm doing something meaningful. One day, while at a cafe after volunteering, I thought I heard my mother's voice. You don't have to overdo it, but your strength might be someone else's light. My mother's true wish was just for us to live decent lives. Not for wealth, not for status, just to live sincerely and walk our own paths. And now I feel like I'm starting to understand that. Mommy, what's for dinner tonight? My daughter's voice called out from the kitchen. I laughed and stood up. Maybe your favorite hamburger steak? Laughter filled our home. After a long struggle, we have finally protected our mother's wishes. And little by little, we are repairing the bonds of our family. The house she cherished is more than just a building to me. And from now on, I want to continue living here. carrying her memory in my heart, and building peaceful days quietly.